There's Rabbit Factor. It should be shipping any second now, right? May 1st on sale date. All right, so we've got Pam and Margaret and Jeff and Julia from IPG all here to talk about some new releases.
Hi, I'm Jeff. I'm your East Coast rep, so if you're in any of the shops that touch the Atlantic or Alabama or West Virginia, you've got me. Not just the shops, the states. I should say the states. I do have a lot of coastal stores, though. Anyhow, the second thing in here is entirely different, and that's something we get to say with almost every move through our catalog. Yagi the Bookshop Goat. This is manga from Tokyo Pop, one of our best-selling publishers. And this book is very good. Manga as a genre can include and encompass just about anything that happens in literature. And I would not have known that had I not started opening every manga book that we sell. This one has all the angst and striving of a Robert Walter novel, but in the form of Yagi, a goat boy who's taken a job in a bookshop in the carnivores district of his city. Romance does ensue, as you'd expect from something that is categorized here as, and somebody who knows might correct my pronunciation, but yaoi. This is an 18 and up manga, though it is got a heart of gold at the center. And the first love affair is really between Yagi and books. He can taste the charms of them very literally. And the idea of getting into book selling is kind of a problem because he does eat the books and has from a young age. That leads to a little bit of friction between him and his very gruff wolf manager, who is a wolf man, in the same way that Yagi is a goat boy. As you can see there on the cover, yeah, a fine illustration of how their ears accentuate the differences between them. And that friction between them and their mutual love of books leads to a different kind of friction between them, which leads us to the 18 and up quality of this book. But I've been photographing panels of this this manga. I've been texting them to bookseller friends. You will find all kinds of little industry jokes in here. It is very, very funny. And such a naive and wide-eyed love of literature and the work that we do that I don't see why you wouldn't want many, many copies of this to pass around.
I will say all of the Tokyo Pop interiors show Japanese text, but they are in English.
Okay, still keeping on the Tokyo Pop theme here, we have I'm Looking for Serious Love. I presented on this one a couple of monthly Zooms ago, but it's still selling really well for us. And I'll just go over the gist of it again. Basically, a chaste young man from rural Japan moves to Tokyo, where he is immediately confronted and sort of appalled by his risque city boy neighbor of a similar age. Despite their inherent oppositional natures, they're obviously drawn to each other. And in fact, the city boy sort of finds himself feeling kind of protective over his new cute neighbor from the country. And an obvious teasing, flirting magnetism develops between the two. The tension of this boy's love title is tied to questions of whether or not the city boy, Takara, will put his playboy days behind him for his new crush, who is, for the title, looking for serious love. This is a mature boys' love title, not for younger audience. It features explicit content, mature language, but fans of flirty, steamy manga plots will definitely glom onto this one. It pubbed in mid-February, and so far IPG has already shipped out 6,500 copies across our channels, so we're doing really well. Next up, we have Assassin's Creed Dynasty Volume 2. This one pubs next week, and we've already shipped over 3,000 units across our channels. For those not familiar with the series, this is a historical action-adventure manga set in 755 CE during the Tianbao era, against the backdrop of a faltering empire, military rebels, and crumbling capitals. The reader follows Li Yi, who in volume 1 joined a shadowy brotherhood of assassins called the Hidden Ones, whose mission is to protect the people from oppression, injustice, just sort of general corruption at the leadership level. They're like dark, masked anti-hero good guys fighting for the average everyday people. And in this volume, a power-hungry military governor turns some very strong military fighters against the Tang dynasty, and our main guy, Li Yi, saddles up with loyalists to save the dynasty and the country. So very action-heavy adventure, fun stuff. Totally different, Alice in Kyoto Forest. This one is an Alice in Wonderland twist, obviously. Volume 1, this one pubs next week, and we've shipped over 1,500 copies before the pub date. It's isekai, which is fantasy manga, in where you go into an unfamiliar, like another world or topsy-turvy world. Let's see. Oh, right, Alice. So she was basically orphaned at a young age and had been moved away from Kyoto to live with her aunt and uncle, who was abusive. So she returns to Kyoto to find that it's kind of a totally different world than what she remembers, upside down. And she has ambitions to become a geisha. And of course, chaos ensues. The art is really great in that one. It's focused on the geisha and Kyoto architecture. So if you have people really into that, that's great. The next one is another Alice in Wonderland take. I guess we're doing really great with those. This one is Alice in Bishunenland. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Pub 2 days ago, and let's see, with volume 1, we already shipped out over 2,100 copies. It's another isekai manga. So the main character is transported into an unfamiliar world. In this case, it's an idol simulation game. So Alice is our main character, and she plays kind of a talent manager, producer type for a handsome boy band. At the risk of oversimplifying, think Alice in Wonderland meets American Idol meets Japanese dating sim game. And then last but certainly not least, this is our international women of manga. The author's actually Italian, but it has obviously still Tokyo Pop, still manga. This one is the 4th volume in the series, and the setup of the series is basically this woman moves to Turin Turin for school. It's the first time she's away from her family and her childhood boyfriend, and her roommate is kind of this like fun-loving gal who likes to be surrounded by Italian hunks, and kind of the de-sheltering of her life and the fallout from that is that series. And that's it from Tokyo Pop.
Okay, but we're not moving away from graphic novel. The next one is Alfred Hitchcock. It is a bio of Alfred Hitchcock, mostly his early life and sort of the parts of his life that got him to become the master of horror that we all know him as, and the master of suspense that we all know him as. So follows a lot of his young life growing up in England, and then coming to the US, and sort of all of the things that made him him.
This one is one of mine. I don't know if there was ever a period when very many women were able to have a single career and retire 50 years later with a gold watch and a comfortable retirement. And the times we're living in now kind of demand constant reinvention. But this is a workbook for women who are reaching a crossroads in their career and want or need to start over. The author, Fran Hauser, has a huge platform, and she's been promoting the heck out of this book. You've probably heard of her previous book, The Myth of the Nice Girl. It was a bestseller and still sells quite well. And this is doing really big numbers through my accounts, especially when Fran does an event. I'm not talking like 5s and 10s, but like 50s and 100s out of single accounts sometimes. Really unusually impressive event sales. And I think that's carrying over to some of my other shops just on the strength of all the publicity she's doing. It's a timely book for a lot of people right now.
So Green Living Made Easy is our second book from Nancy Birtwistle. We had another one called Clean and Green, and we just sold a ton. And kept like importing more and more because we didn't really realize what the demand was going to be. So we're on top of this one. And the deal with her is that she won the Great British Bake Off in 2014. So she has she's beloved by fans of the show. And this one has like a nice Jonathan Van Ness endorsement for it. And yeah, it's like all different parts of your life, ways to live more eco-consciously.
Okay, Jim Murray's Whiskey Bible 2022 edition. So Jim Murray is the whiskey guy. I feel like this one is pretty self-explanatory. He's the world's maybe foremost whiskey connoisseur. He's kind of sets the trend. He's the tastemaker for current best whiskeys on the market. He's released an updated whiskey Bible annually since 2003. And his latest version is the North American edition, and it features 1,200 new whiskeys. While Murray is an expert, his writing is accessible to all readers and is even occasionally humorous. So definitely a great book for fans of whiskeys. It's got all kinds of Scotch, rye. So it's not particular to just.
I just want to jump in as the resident whiskey expert here and say that this is something that used to be gifted to me before I started working for IPG, and now can get them myself. But it is like the premier whiskey book. So definitely for the whiskey fans in your life.
I'm going to glide smoothly over the idea that Julia is the whiskey expert in many things. But Muggsy Bogues, speaking of a little shot glass of a man, that's not funny. He was a 5'3" point guard, for those of you who don't know. He played mostly for the Charlotte Hornets, also played for the Gulls, the Bullets, and the Golden State Warriors and the Raptors. This book pubbed on Tuesday and has been lighting up Twitter. Basically, everybody who's ever played with him or seen him play has been talking about it, which is, it turns out, quite a lot of people. And like I said, 5'3". This was the smallest man to play in the NBA, and the man could dunk. He is beloved by all basketball fans who saw him play in the 90s. And strangely enough, this book has 2 forewords, one of them by a guard, Steph Curry, and the other by Alonzo Mourning, if you like your throwback players as well. But this is really, like, if your store doesn't do sports much, this is still like a great sports book to bring in. The guy had a lot of profile as a small ball player. Also, Noodles Please. I have a lot of feelings about Noodles Please. And it comes from my strong feelings about all alphabet books. All alphabet books are worse than this one. This is the single best alphabet book ever made by anybody. Hey, stop scrolling, Chris. You're getting a little too active over there. We're talking about Noodles Please. This book.
I wanted to make sure Bagels wasn't there.
Yeah, well, I've got things to say about bagels, and I'm going to say them now. We have a book called B is for Bagel, where X is extra schmear. That is lazy alphabet stuff. In this book, X is chow mein. We have an actual noodle dish for every. Thank you, Amanda. That's entirely my point. Extra is cheating. So is xylophone when it's not specifically a music book. But people do these things all the time. These are legitimate noodle dishes for every letter. I checked the hard ones, the Q's, the X's, the Y's and Z's. Q is a good, I was skeptical of Q. It is QQ noodles, which I looked into it, totally legitimate noodle dish. Yes, Linda, X, that's how they spell it in Chinese with Roman alphabets. It's fine.
I'm not sure how I feel about this spaghetti.
QQ noodles.
Spaghetti. I don't think.
QQ noodles are a very common Taiwanese dish. I actually have a copy of this over here as well. But yeah, they've got, not only do they have noodles from all over the world, but they've got specific spellings. They've got the city where the noodles dish is most common. They've got pronunciations, and they've got, well, the pronunciation's a little iffy, but they've also got like the original alphabet for, you know, some of the Korean, you know, the non-Western alphabet dishes. It is beautiful and perfect in every regard.
And $12.95. And the pronunciation key is on the QR code, or you can hear the pronunciation on the QR code.
Right. And in case you were wondering what the proper use of a QR code is, besides menus in every restaurant, it's this. You need at least 10 of them. And actually, I think I saw that Christine Jean-Jacquet is in here from the Queen's Museum, and I think she might have taken 10 of them quite correctly. It's the only person who gets it.
This is a new publisher for us called Imagine and Wonder that started at the end of last year. And these are two, they're two kids books that have a marker that can be wiped away after the kid works on it. Here's the other, the other title is here. Pretty straightforward activity books, but these were in our like top 20 sellers this month.
My sister is a big fan of these as a knitter and crocheter.
I'm not sure who's talking about this one, so I'm going to talk about it and just say that our amigurumi books do super well. We have a lot of them, and apparently they are still hugely popular because they quite often appear in our top 20 sellers at indie bookstores.
Okay, so the next one is called The River Between Hearts by Heather Mateus Sappenfield. For those of you who have been at MPIBA the last couple of times, Heather's been there. She did a yoga class at MPIBA. Was it last week? I don't know what day it is. But this book, it takes place in Colorado, and it's this sort of adventure novel that revolves around a young girl getting over the sudden loss of her father. So it's a great a Western novel, as in takes place in the Western US, but also just like a really great coming of age novel. So hope you check that one out. And then the next one is The 100 Choices Department Store by Ginger Park. This is a novel about a North Korean family that has to move to the South as Japanese imperialism starts to wane, and the dictatorship that we know now as North Korea starts to take hold. Again, a juvenile fiction novel, and one that I think just is a really great book about this North Korean family and sort of what they have to go through, and what happens when dictatorship sort of uproots family.
All right, this one is also Fitzroy Books, and I presented on it this YA title a couple of months ago, but I thought I'd bring it back to folks' attention because it seems to be catching on a bit since its pub date back in February. The story of this one is kind of wacky. A young, heartbroken Abe Perlman, who is our main character, wanders into a psychic reading salon in this sort of a moment of lovesick desperation as he's been shunned by his crush, whose name is Mitzi. And magical realism ensues, as it so often does with young adults and back alley fortune tellers. The psychic pretends that very soon Abe might be able to save someone's life, and before he knows it, Abe has actually been time warped back to Jack the Ripper, Victorian London. His crush Mitzi has also been warped alongside him, and the two have to work together to figure out how to survive one of history's most notorious criminal cases and possibly crack the case. And they also have to survive the outpouring of hate toward Jewish refugees that the Ripper murders triggered. Ripped Away is based on real historical events, including the Ripper crimes, the inquest, and the accusations against immigrants. And this is a great title for 12-year-old and up. Next up is also Fitzroy. I think they've got a lot of really great looking YA titles, and don't sleep on them. And this one is also kind of time warpy fun stuff. It's also for 12-year-olds and up. This one pubbed in February. It's about a family called the Redmaynes, and they're a quirky, intriguing family who appear to live in 3 cities all at once: London, Paris, and New York. And how they do it is kind of a mystery to everyone, but their home seems to have magical transportational properties to it. And the 3 children think they know how it all works. That is until they lose their little brother, Emil. They're not sure where, but somewhere in another time in another place. This one is a nail-biter adventure, doubling as a story about what a family, and more specifically about what makes a happy family. This prize-winning novel will entertain and delight young adult readers of all ages. Yeah.
Okay, so I know every indie bookstore knows this author, Steve Erickson. When I was an indie bookseller, I sold the heck out of Zeroville when that one came out from Europa. So this is Steve's latest, and it's like a collection of his diary entries and journals from 2019 to 2021. So in the Trump era, in the beginning of COVID, in the, just all of the nuttiness, if you think about those, that period, like all of the nuttiness that happened. And it's sort of his take on both the sort of wild things that were happening in the world, and then also some of the like mundane bits of life that, we all kind of had to keep doing as the world was sort of blowing up all around us. And so I want to make sure all indie booksellers know that this is coming out. I know y'all have big Steve Erickson fans that come to see you. So this is his newest. And then the next one is Release the Beast, A Drag Queen's Guide to Life by Bimini. I think we would all be much better off if we just listened to drag queens and, got their advice on really everything. And this Bimini, she was the breakout star of season 2 of RuPaul's Drag Race UK. And so this is her sort of guide. It's a touching, there's some memoirish bits of it, and it's like sort of a touching guide just to life and her sort of ideas about life. It's illustrated by the illustrator of Icon Books' Queer Graphic History, if you guys remember that book, which I gave to like literally all my friends. And so it's got great illustrations and just a really great book.
These are my from Collective Book Studio, who did the Fran Hauser book that Jeff talked about earlier, and they have done 2 inexpensive but beautiful postcard books. Maybe these are going to replace puzzles in your store. Seems like people are maybe a little tired of the puzzle situation, and so yeah, we've got 2 really beautiful artist-based. I believe they're all on the West Coast. These 2 artists book postcards, doing well, or they wouldn't be on this list.
Okay, and the next one we have is The Meeting Point by Olivia Lara. This is a romance novel. It takes place in San Francisco, Carmel, California, and New York. And it's just this really sweet romance novel about 2 people sort of who find each other with the help of and also hindrance of technology. So one that I think is really great to put in the hands of folks looking for a nice romance, sort of a romantic comedy.
This is young adult historical fiction from Penguin Random House, Singapore. So it takes place in 1930s British Malaya, which is now Malaysia. And the lead is an indentured servant. She's, like a lot of young girls in that time and place, sold to a rich family. So it's about her struggle to form an identity of her own and be happy. Definitely not a normal, or not a time and place that I feel like we see a lot in Western publishing for especially young people. And then The Fort from Head of Zeus. This is the first in a new series. And this guy, Adrian Goldsworthy, writes nonfiction books about Roman history and just gets awesome reviews. He's a super serious historian. And so all of the action adventure here is kind of backed up by meticulous historical detail.
I'm really psyched about The Fort. On the fall list, we've got the next 2 books in the trilogy, and I'm going to just burn through all 3 of them real fast.
All right, hopefully you caught our newsletter this week about intelligent fitness and all of the actors who posted to Instagram, because the author, Simon Watterson, is kind of a celebrity trainer. And this book did so great in hardcover. It came out January, is that right? And it sold through, and we had to reprint it in paperback very quickly. And so, yeah, if you need a fitness book, maybe this one will be, some customers will come in trying to recreate those pecs.
Okay, this one is super exciting. We've had this before in hardcover, and it's volume 1. Volume 2 is on the way. It's the Best of World SF, and it's actually World SF. It's truly diverse. 21 countries are represented, 5 continents, and it's people sort of at the start of their career, along with better known writers and mostly non-white authors. And because of this diversity, I feel like you got what you kind of want out of that, which is diversity also of style. These stories are all over the spectrum of sci-fi, and there's this like freshness to the whole anthology. If you look at the review quotes, they're all just like kind of exhilarated and relieved and like, oh my God, this is what you give to people who think they don't like sci-fi. And also the editor, he's a great sci-fi writer in his own right. He does book reviews for Washington Post, and he was the first person to publish in English, I don't know how to say his name, the 3-Body Problem author, that guy. So he has a great eye.
And it's 624 pages for $16.95.
I think that book also has some Lauren Bukes in it, if I remember right, if you're looking for some recognizable names.
I'll be there. My Life with the Four Tops is new from Omnibus Press. We got very little warning about this book. The Four Tops were from Detroit. If Allison is still here, any of my Midwesterners, this book is doing super well. We love omnibus books. If only we knew when their books were coming. We would like them even more.
So Under Her Skin is a collection of really diverse horror and like dark poetry by women, which includes trans and non-binary folks as well. The author or the editor of this is the host of the Ladies of Horror Fiction podcast. One of the things that I hear the most when I'm talking to accounts is like how much they need good horror. And so this is kind of a cool collection that might really fit for people who are looking for something a little off the beaten path, because it is, of course, horror poetry. Yeah, really cool title. The next one is Greyhound Americans. So this is also poetry. It's a collection of queer and trans indigenous poetry. The author is a trans person and Indigenous person, and it goes into sort of the history behind a lot of these identities, celebrates sort of their transness and their Indigenous heritage, and it's just kind of a great look at identity from this perspective.
Not to step on your line too much, Julia,
Please.
but I think this book is really cool, and it has a blurb from Diane Seuss, who's a poet that I like an awful lot. That's published by Grey Wolf. It's if you haven't read any of her work, you should take a look. But the fact that she's really into this title too, it's a great vote of confidence from a very good poet.
Thanks, Jeff. And finally, for me in this little grouping is A Way to Stay by Mary Kurila. Sorry. This is an exploration. It's a novel. It's an exploration of precarity of shelter and home in the life of an immigrant and an American working family. So the author is based in Los Angeles, and it sort of looks at this immigrant family who's just trying to make it, and sort of the precarity that so many people in our country live in because of capitalism and, you know, the inability to sort of keep work, particularly in regards to immigration status, and then also just like people just trying to make it and survive and be out of exactly, because capitalism, it's always capitalism is always the villain. So anyway, it's just a really great novel, and particularly if you're in Southern California, but really anywhere, it is a good one.
Speaking of Detroit, I'm talking about Vlad the Impaler, or Julia, are you talking about Vlad the Impaler?
Well, you said you would, but I'm always happy to talk about hockey.
I don't really know much about Vlad the Impaler, except that it's Stanley Cup winner, Detroit, late 90s. Somebody chiming in.
And he was very seriously injured in, I believe, a car accident after one of the games. It was possibly the championship where the Detroit Red Wings won, but it's sort of his journey of healing after that as well.
And this was a drop-in that we just learned about maybe last month.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the next one is Disappeared. This is from Ocean View Publishing, which is one of our thriller, sort of genre thriller publishers that we really love. And this is a real, this book has a real sense of place, and that place is Morocco. And it's about a woman whose sister disappears from the hotel they're staying at in Morocco, and she has to, the woman has to find her sister. So it's a great thriller. It takes place in the desert in and around Morocco. Steve Barry gave us a great quote for this one. So I think it's going to be one that you can just definitely put into the hands of people who love a good thriller, and they'll enjoy. And then next up is The Women of Genji Cohen, Weeds, Orange is the New Black, and Glow. So Genji Cohen, of course, created both Weeds and Orange is the New Black. I used to teach her daughter roller derby because I live in Los Angeles, and that's the kind of thing that happens in Los Angeles. But this is a great collection of essays about those shows and sort of how Genji Cohen in the world of her writing gave better representation to women, women of all gender, sexuality, race, socioeconomic class, all of those different things. She sort of has brought so much to life, and this is a collection of essays that celebrates that.
Right. I think I'm featuring 3 books from Lund Humphreys, who publishes all art books. This one being a monograph on American artist Ellen Gallagher. She, I think, lives in Rhode Island these days, and New York. There's not tons of her books available on her. And yeah, I like her work a ton. you might know her stuff. She does this sort of appropriation of Black women in sort of vintage 70s magazines and kind of changes up their hairstyles and stuff is maybe her like most iconic piece. And then there are two readers. One is Restitution, which is about institutions, the pressure on institutions to return artifacts to the original owners, many of them lost and looted during wartime. And then The Rise of the Private Art Museum, which gives the sort of startling fact that sort of 400 private art museums have cropped up over the past 20 years, and it's mostly a way to evade taxing, to evade taxes, and under this weird like cultural guise. Yeah, so that's what this book is about. She just did a release at Expo Chicago for this book. The author is American. So there you go.
Okay. Cuentos de los Hermanos Grimm is those tales of the Brothers Grimm, if you need a little Spanish translation, Spanish to English translation. We like to show you these because Editorial Alma, who's one of our Spanish language publishers, does such beautiful editions of classic literature. That's classic literature that is was written originally in English. And so we want to make sure you see these guys. Chris is showing you, there's a bunch of different ones. And yeah, I mean, I don't know what there is to say about the Brothers Grimm that hasn't already been said, but it looks real pretty in this edition.
There we are. Yeah.
All right, Dark Factory. This is a super trippy title that I picked because I was mostly just curious about what exactly it is. The book has really strong William Gibson vibes. I recently reread Gibson's Burning Chrome, and that's what this DRC kind of immediately made my mind jump to, but with heavier warehouse party tropes. The story is written a majority in dialogue and or internal monologue, and this is definitely an experience kind of book with lots of mixed media elements, including a QR code on the cover that takes you to a supplementary website that has images, text, hashtags, forums, and what I think is fanfic, all of which serve to enhance the druggy, sex, dance party vibes of the book's world. I haven't totally wrapped my head around it, but it seems like a very cool project that goes way beyond being just a book and seems more like an immersive cybernetic experience. And it's selling pretty well, so definitely recommend.
Detroit. All right, Dry Heat is a book that I just learned about this week. And it's from an Evanston, Illinois author, Midwestern author, and it is a kind of high school story about a drug dealer and his girlfriend and being pursued by the police.
I was born in Evanston.
So My Body Keeps Your Secrets. I love this one. This is from Indigo Press. They are a feminist, socialist, internationalist press, and their books are really good. And this is feminist narrative nonfiction. And Lucia Osborne Crawley is a journalist who does a lot of work on trauma and like mind-body connection stuff. And she does a lot of research because she could not find the answers she needed. So she's like kind of searching. And I like that she gets like science in there. It's a lot of like brain science stuff. along with personal anecdotes. And she talks to like 100 women and non-binary people and incorporates their stories. And she's gotten a lot of attention also because she was in the UK. She was covering the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. Well, she came here, but was covering it for like UK news sources. And she got the first juror interview. And she's going to be in this forthcoming, I think Apple is doing a docu-series on the trial. So she's going to be in that a bunch as an expert. And I think she's really smart, and her stuff, I don't read really self-help, like it's not really self-help, but it's just really smart, like I said, narrative nonfiction.
I was surprised by how much of it is other people's writing, like her talking about other feminist thought and other feminist writers and what they kind of have to say on the subject. Okay, another one from Lund Humphreys that I bet Julia has been doing well with. It's architecture, interior and interiors with a kind of mid-century West Coast vibe, very coffee table book.
Yeah, so Greta grew up in Sweden and then came to Los Angeles, and you can see a lot of Palm Springs and the areas that is Palm Springs, most def. And the areas around Los Angeles, this sort of mid-century modern architecture that LA can be so famous for and California can be so famous for. Really beautiful book, and I have been doing well with it.
He's talking about Dahmer. Can't remember.
I don't mind talking about Dahmer. This is Inside the Mind of Jeffrey Dahmer, the Cannibal Killer. So this one is definitely a look inside, basically the author who Christopher Barry D. He like talks to a lot of serial killers. He's sort of, John Douglas, who wrote Mindhunter, he sort of does a similar thing. And he sort of delves into the psychology of Dahmer and of like what would make a person want to, eat other people. And when they're not like stuck in the Chilean, the mountains in Chile and forced to.
Soccer.
So yeah, exactly. Thank you for getting that reference, Chris. But yeah, so this is a book about Jeffrey Dahmer and sort of the psychology of what makes people do things like this.
I think this might be mine, but by default, and I'm skipping it because I don't really remember what to say about it. There you go. Plus for overtime. We'll try to finish up here. Am I talking about Mudhoney from Omnibus? All right, West Coast grunge band Mudhoney. This is the second edition of this book. It's heavily illustrated. It's doing super well. We sold it to the Sub Pop Superstore, which is exciting. And yeah, it's doing super well. Javier, if you're still on here, I think I sent you this. It's a great book and it's selling well.
All right, Adventures at Home, 40 Inspiring Ideas for Making Memories. This is just a great, as we are all spending more time at home, even still, this is just a great book of activities to do, sort of all sorts of things with crafts and like activity, all sorts of activities, and stuff to do with kids too. So includes doing stuff with kids.
Okay, this is cool. It's the second in a series, but they totally work as standalone. And the series is based on this real life scandal in the late 70s in the UK, where there was a mini series based on it called A Very British Scandal with Hugh Grant that was really good. And this politician basically tried to ordered a hit on this rent boy because the politician was about to be outed as gay. And so it starts from there and makes that rent boy the hero and like the sort of detective figure. And now this is the second in the series. And so now we're not in the 70s, but we're in 1984. And there's like the miners' strike happening, and people are battling the National Front. And it works in like Derek Jarman's a character, and a young Jeremy Corbyn. So it's like super cool, you know, art and leftist early 80s UK stuff, which I feel like is so exciting.
Based on real people?
Yeah, it takes that. I mean, I don't think it uses their names, but it takes that situation and like goes off from there.
Nice. All right, it's murder, don't you know? I can barely say that without wanting to cry. But this is a cozy mystery with recipes. So, you know, very Midwestern. I mean, look at all of the authors' other titles. It's all about bringing casseroles over and things like that. So, yeah.
It's like she's like Joanna Fluke, but with Midwestern food, like hot dish.
Yes, hot dish. Thank you.
Oh, the Atlas of Unusual Languages. Some years ago, I went to college once, and I might have been a linguistics major for a little while, and Julia's already shaking her head. She's like, no, you weren't. I was, and my favorite professor was this guy named Hans Heinrich Hock, who is a German-born Sanskrit scholar. But anyhow, he taught us all about a lot of these things. Like this book has chapters on like language isolates, and those are pretty cool, like Basque, that's, you know, spoken between Spain and France, or Ainu, which is spoken between Japan and Russia. There's like Indo-European language, or non-Indo-European languages in Europe, like the Uric languages, like Hungarian and Finnish, speaking of Antti. Yeah, those two languages are connected. Nobody knows why. Fun mysteries like that come up in this book all the time. And the coolest thing, though, is the stuff I didn't know and had never heard of. There's a chapter on Polari, which is a mixture of Romani, rhyming slang, criminal slang, and Yiddish that is spoken by like criminal lower classes in the UK. And I just want to know everything about that. I'm sure there's a Guy Ritchie movie featuring some of it, but it like everything in here sounds very exciting and cool.
Right, I think maybe there's one more, and it is the NCAA championship instant book, which, you know, if you're not in Kansas, yeah, it's called Load the Wagon. If you're not in Kansas, maybe you don't care. But I just want you to be aware we do these books for every major championship league game, and this is the one that just came out 2 weeks ago. That's all.
Load the wagon with what, Chris?
Books, of course. So, okay, thanks everybody. If anybody needs to chime in with questions in the chat or in real life, feel free, but we're going to sign off. And not sure who's going to join us next month, which visiting author we're going to have, but we'll let you know. And it should be the second Thursday of May at 2 Eastern. So thanks so much, everybody, for showing up. And
2 Central, not 2 Eastern.
Thank you. Never get that straight. Thank you.